going back into the history books, 1992 was the year that the home buyers plan came out. And the home buyers plan, which is the ability to remove money from your RRSP without triggering tax to buy your first home. At the time in 1992, you could take $20,000 out of your home buyers plan, and you could then remove that without tax, provided it was for your first home. It has to be in the account for at least 90 days, and it has to be, for a home purchase happening within 30 days of the withdrawal. And then after 2 years, so you'd have kind of a 2-year payment holiday, then over the next 15 years, you can pay back the RRSP. But because of the time value of money, the longer and longer you defer it, the more it gets to, a straight out tax savings. Okay. So that's where we were in 1992. Then you fast forward where things really start cooking, right? And we've talked about this on the show where, the change in the monetary system, the acceleration of the increase in the M2 money supply, 2009, so right after the great financial crisis, they moved the goalposts on the home buyers plan from $20,000 to $35,000. There's a little bit of an interim step where it went from like 25 to 35, but that's neither here nor there. Ultimately, it landed at $35,000. Okay. Then you fast forward to 2024. Okay, to 2024, where the home buyers plan went from $35,000 to $60,000 was the withdrawal limit. Okay, so you're basically talking a 3x. You're talking a 3x in that time, and home prices, kind of reflected that. Like home prices were increasing at kind of a similar rate, right? But then concurrently, what's happening is there's also a new program called your First Time Home Savers Account. And so the First Time Home Savers Account is different in that you can also, contribute to it and get a tax deduction, and you can take it out, okay? But when you take it out, you can avoid the tax on taking it out. You do not have to put it back in. It's a one and it's a one and done, and it's different in that it does not have a withdrawal limit. It has a contribution limit of $8,000 per year and a $40,000 lifetime limit. Okay, so Trevor, in your experience, working with clients, getting mortgages, how many of them do you think are aware of this or truly maximizing this opportunity?
Well, I don't know if enough people are taking advantage of it. I've worked with a couple of people in the last couple of years here who have done that. We did that ourselves. We used our FHSA and our RRSPs in order to purchase our home. But I think, more people need to be aware of these devices that have been put together by the government to actually help people save up for a home. Now, that being said, even though you have those contribution limits and you've got these programs that are set up for you to be able to win, I think where the problem lies is people actually having the money to invest in these things. Okay, so you can, from what I remember, you can set up you set up an FHSA in Wealthsimple, and you can invest in stocks and whatever through there. You totally can, but people need to, actually get started setting these things up. Don't necessarily have to go to a major bank. You can go through Wealthsimple. I believe you can go through Questrade and set these up on a self-directed account, and you can actually do some investing with it. So you're getting some gains while you're putting some money away for saving for that house. So I think that's a good thing for people to do, but I don't know how many people are actually taking advantage of it. And if they have the extra money to be able to take advantage of it. But I think if you start off, like you say, $100 a month, like that's something, right? And how long are you allowed to have? That's one thing I don't know is how long can you keep that first home savings account open for?
I believe you can actually keep it open until you're 71 years old, Trevor. It's like it's actually like okay. Longer than you would actually probably want to use the program. But once you get that locked in, I think people are underestimating. And you brought up a good point too, Trevor, because you owned a home in the past, but then you weren't a homeowner, right? And so most people think like, okay, I bought my first house, I can never use this again. It's like, not exactly. Not exactly. It's like anyone who has not owned a home, or they or their spouse has not owned a home in the 4 preceding calendar years. So at any point in those 4 preceding calendar years is now considered a new home buyer again. And so some people get out for various reasons. They get out of the housing market, and then they get back into the housing market, and they just assume, well, I've owned a home before, so I'm not a first-time home buyer. When in reality, you are, right? You are, according to the technical definition. And then the other big one, this wasn't your scenario, Trevor. You were out of the home market and then back into the home market at a later date, but unfortunately, in this day and age, 50% of the population gets divorced. The minute you get divorced and you no longer are the one who owns that home, like that person is no longer your spouse and you don't own that home, you essentially immediately requalify, and you don't even actually have to go through the 4-year waiting period. So a lot of people find themselves never expecting to be a new home buyer again, and all of a sudden they are a new home buyer. And so it's not just the quintessential, you think about the person who's, the young person buying their first home. It's the person who is out of the housing market now re-entering back into the housing market. It's the person who, because of a marital breakdown, they become divorced, they become a new home buyer again. And then the last step in the cycle, it's like eventually it's the parent who has a child, and they're going to help their kids enter this housing market. All of these people can be getting $100,000 of income tax-free. They can be getting $100,000 of income tax-free. And I would say most people don't, they kind of ignore it because it sounds complicated, and maybe they think it doesn't apply to them. And probably a lot of them are disillusioned from the bank process. But you mentioned something, Trevor, providers like Wealthsimple, Questrade, where people can get started down these paths of $100 a month, right? And this is like my baby step. You steal a page out of Dave Ramsey's book, where I just think everybody needs to have at least $100 a month going out of the fake fiat currency into real desirable assets, because it's a habit. It's a habit that people need to start. I don't think they should be investing significant sums before they pay off their high interest debt. So that's debt that we reasonably can't outperform in an investment product. But, until people start getting that $100 a month, I don't think they're all that motivated to pay off debt, because they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see it. And so why those providers are so significant is, when I started trading stocks in 1998, I'm going to date myself, 1998, when I was 17 years old. It's like these platforms were not available. You could not invest $100 because you wanted to invest $100 a month. Well, guess what? You're going to sign up a brokerage account at one of these big banks, and they're going to charge you, $100 or $250 per quarter just to have the brokerage account open. And then they're going to charge you $30 every time you place an order. $30 every time you place an order. So investing $100, you're underwater. You're behind. You're behind 30%. You're behind 30%. So these things are. So people think that these, they think it's like, I have two options. I go to the bank, and I'm pretty sure that the banks aren't giving me the best advice. I'm pretty sure these banks are out for themselves, or, I don't have enough money for it to be to me. But today, like, there are platforms available where, someone with whether they can max out these contributions and hit the ground running, or they only got $100 a month. It's like these platforms do exist. They do exist. And it has changed my view on where people should go for their first initial real estate purchase. Because when it was only $20,000, we know that the currency is expanding. We know that the money is moving from the people who do the work to the people who own the assets. So the longer you stay out of the housing market, the more difficult it is to participate in that appreciation upwards. But because you could only save $20,000 effectively. But now we've gone from $20,000 to $100,000. And we went there in relatively short order. So basically, the amount that you can put forward now, essentially for the most part, from 2009 until now, has gone up by $80,000. Okay. There was the ability to shield $20,000 to use for your first home. Arguably, depending on how you calculate or interpret the payback period and the time value of money. But arguably you went from $20,000 shielding income to $100,000. Now, in that time, housing prices have gone up, but they have not gone up 5x in that time. They have not gone up. They've gone up too much and they've gone up too quickly and people are hurting by it, but they have not gone up 5x at that time. And also proportionately, the ability to get self-directed investments has also changed. Okay. Going back to, even like I said, in the 90s, the early 2000s, is like there was no platforms available where you could invest small amounts, right? So you're basically going to an RBC and picking their balanced fund and getting whatever return they tell you is fair after they take their exorbitant management fee, right? That was most people's ability to get there. But at this point, I think it's where the argument to get a starter home gets much weaker now that you can shield $100,000, where it's like you want to get something that's a good asset. And I tell people you want to get something that's a good asset for the next 100 years. And we don't plan to live 100 years. We're not vampires, but at the same time, it's like, is this an asset that I would have in my family for the next 100 years? That's a good asset. And so not even it's an asset that I want to live there forever. But it's an asset that would I be happy with the rental income from that for a period of time. And I think that's different now that that I can get $100,000 tax free. You start looking at different properties, right? The ability to put 5 or 10% down to get into the market, or even, skip a step and go all the way to 35% down and get a readvanceable HELOC, which we teach people about in the boot camp and the value of that. But I think it changes the perspective. Would you agree, Trevor? Would you knowing that there's the ability to shield $100,000 tax free? You're giving your son Tate advice on how he's 19 right now, right?
He's 20 actually. He's 20. Yeah, going to be 21 this month.
Would you be encouraging him right now to jump into whatever he can get, or shield that entire $100,000?
Oh man, no questions asked. It's going to be shielding that money from any taxation. Because things are hard enough as it is when you're earning income, you're taxable, you're buying things, and in most instances, capital gains tax. So, if we can shield money from taxation, that is always the best plan going forward. And the beautiful thing is, if you do happen to have a spouse or a common law partner, you can both qualify under these programs, and you can put all of your monies towards the purchase of a home, purchase of real estate.
Yes.
So I think that, getting started is step one. Knowing what to invest in. The beautiful thing about it, with these Wealth Simple accounts, the FHSA and so forth, is you can invest in ETFs. You can invest in Canadian dividend paying stocks. You can invest in gold ETFs, things that actually have a decent rate of return. So it just helps that compounding effect will help your contributions grow faster and faster. So you'll get into that home a lot sooner than you go to some Royal Bank or Scotiabank product.
Yeah. And that's a big consideration too. It's a big consideration for me, is the rate of return that's possible now that you have a self-directed account for a reasonable fee. And, for those of us who follow this channel, we are, we're pretty big Bitcoiners. We recognize the destruction of the monetary system, and we've been increasingly involved in Bitcoin since 2022 at this point, and successfully so. And so it's a lot of people who think that, am I going to save for my first house or invest in Bitcoin? And for those people, most of them are consuming American information, and they don't realize that you could be doing both. You could be doing both. There are Bitcoin ETFs in Canada that are 100% eligible for RRSPs or first-time home savers account. And so, there are going to be people probably some of them that are our clients who are going to end up putting money in an FHSA and withdrawing it at significantly higher valuations. Because remember, your RSP is basically a withdrawal limit. You have a $60,000 withdrawal limit, but the FHSA is $8,000 a year for 5 years. You get your $40K. That's a contribution limit. If that thing goes up 2x or 3x or 4x, you can take it all out tax-free. Okay. So,
and that's the beautiful thing about it. Like bringing all that money out tax-free, and you can put it towards a home. No penalties, no taxes. It's just, man, a good step forward for anybody who wants to get into the market. So when they talk about people not having hope for their future, not having hope of home ownership, get started today. And if you really want to know what things you should be investing in, you got to get a ticket to the boot camp. We only sell out like 130 tickets. So like time is of the essence. Get on board. The next one's in November.
That's right. And so
just a little plug there.
We are trying to, bridge the gap here, because I see a lot of people and they think like Josh, I'm just all in on Bitcoin. Like I don't see the point of this. It's like, I don't think anyone should finish the game. I don't think anyone should be 65 years old with $0 in self-custody Bitcoin. I think that's a risk. Like, I think that's a risk, in having zero self-custody Bitcoin. But I mean, what is the risk that you're going to be canceled from the financial system if you're a 19-year-old kid saving for your down payment? It's like, you're not on anyone's radar at this point. And so like maximizing these tax benefits. Whereas if you actually really do believe in Bitcoin, I'm not a Michael Saylor. I don't have 100% of my net worth in Bitcoin, but I have a sizable percentage, right? And I laugh at the no coiners giving so-called financial advice that they have a 0% allocation to the best performing asset in the last 15, 16 years. So it's getting off of zero is I think being on zero is a risk. Being at 100% is also a risk. But taking an allocation, when you're first starting out, the holding self-custody Bitcoin doesn't probably have doesn't make the most sense, because there's some better tax vehicles to hold the paper Bitcoin, to hold the ETFs. And quite frankly, you just don't have enough, you don't have enough net worth that you're really worried about the catastrophic. The goal is to get a sizable enough net worth first, and then get some of it as insurance off the financial system. And so, for the young people out there saying, it's like, I don't believe in any of it. I think, Bitcoin is better. I don't want to buy a house. Like, well, you could be saving for both. You could actually be saving for both, because, if you do think, it's going to have a crazy return, you could just withdraw it for that. You could take a mortgage against it and buy back your self-custody Bitcoin after. So, these are some parameters. And I think it's also important for the people who are helping their kids buy a house too. Don't be impatient about this process, right? Don't be impatient, and don't be reactive. Be proactive into this. It's like, am I going to help my kid buy a house someday? If so, maybe I should be looking at, instead of gifting them all at once, gifting them periodically over time, so they can at least make their contributions to their first time home savers account, and making sure that my kid can get $100,000 of income tax protected. And even though they have very little income, they pay little tax on that. People don't really understand how tax filings work sometimes, that you can essentially defer deducting the contributions to a later year to RRSPs. So, although it might not seem like a big deal now, it's like you're going to shield $100,000 from tax, and you can actually do it strategically sometimes, where the date where you make the contribution is not the date where you take the deduction, but at the same time, it is available. So, this is, like I said, this is for the new home buyers. This is for anybody who suddenly finds themselves out of the housing market and back in, becomes a new home buyer. This is for anyone who gets a divorce, and this is for anyone who's going to eventually help their kids buy a house someday. It's like, you need to know these rules. Like, the goal we talk about, a lot of times at the boot camp, is people like talk about the crazy taxes and how do you reduce them. It's like, forget about reducing taxes. First, look for all of the opportunities you can do to make income 100% tax-free. Like, what are our tax-free options first? Not a little bit cheaper. I mean, they're tax-free first. And this is one of them. Like, this is one. There's a number of them out there that people just don't know. And like, this is one where $100,000 of income used for the purchase of a house can be tax-free.